Welcome to the Inner Huddle Series 2, Episode 8. I'm Pez, and he's Geoff. And as normal, we have a list of questions in front of us sent in by you, the general public, from our many different social media platforms and people that we're involved with coaching. And we're going to do our best to crack on through them and add a little bit of value. This episode is sponsored by SR Health, Safety and Engineering Limited, and all thanks to them for doing so. How are you doing, Geoff?
Yeah, I'm good, Pez.
Good. Again, it's been a few weeks.
Yeah, so hello to you and to our millions of listeners.
Gazillions, I believe, at
Yeah.
last count. When I look it up, it just says gazillions. That's it.
Yeah.
From all around the world. Wessex
Wessex.
started first game of the season on Sunday, I believe.
Yeah.
How was it?
Tough first game against Loughborough, who are always very well organised. I mean, Loughborough University is a place where you go if you want to be an athlete, so they're always very good at getting up and down the court, very energetic. We were very good first half and still went in 4-2 down. I don't know how. Created loads of chances, but such is futsal. We went in 4-2 down, and then chasing a game of futsal against a very good side is always difficult.
Fit side as well.
Yeah, I think at one point we got it back to 5-3. We scored 3 very good goals in the game, but ended up losing the game 8-3, which sounds quite bad if you're it's a football background, but futsal, that can be quite often the way it goes.
Absolutely. Well, it's the start of the season. It's a long season. Plenty more games to be played.
Yeah.
Said like a true pundit, I think.
And on, what was it today? Tuesday?
Yes.
I'm losing track. Monday last night we had our first extra session for the youth players, because a lot of parents and players have been asking could they do more futsal, so we put on a just playing hour, so where they turn up and we play some small-sided, small court futsal. It was loads of fun, and I can't wait for the next one.
Sounds amazing.
It is.
How do I sign up?
By changing your birth certificate
Well,
to
it
at
can
least
be
under
done.
16.
It can be done. No, I wouldn't fancy them running rings around me. Right, well, we have our list in front of us. And as usual, I have a few notes and you have an extensive list of notes in front of you.
You want to dive straight into the questions. You don't want to talk about the fact that you've had a little trip to Italy and watched a couple of games.
Oh, what, the weekend?
Yeah.
Yes, well, I went to watch AC Milan in the San Siro versus Verona. Very, very good. Rafa Leao's a good player, by the way. He scored a very good goal. The atmosphere was incredible. Best seats I've ever had.
Your seats look lovely. I was very jealous.
Little TVs in front of them and stuff. I don't know how we managed to pull it off, but we did.
You literally had your feet up.
Yes, we did, yes. Although we did get told off for that.
Oh.
And I was like, I just did it for Instagram. Just did it for Geoff to see. But yeah.
That was worth it then.
Yeah, it was very worth it. But it got delayed by 25 minutes because of...
Because you had your feet up.
Because we had our feet up, yeah. They were trying to find us in the stadium to tell us off. It started hailing, believe it or not. And
Oh,
they
really?
were absolutely bouncing off the turf. I've never seen anything like it. And I think the players knew that it was going to be delayed because they were absolutely not bothered in their warm-up. Just went through the motions. The ball was getting stuck. It ended up like a Sunday morning one. They just booting the ball at the goal. Then they went off, and then it was announced it was a 25-minute delay, which was great. I was in those seats just watching Sky Sports News. And
Were you undercover, or did you?
we were undercover. I think everyone's undercover at that.
Oh wow.
Except for maybe the very front ones were getting a little bit wet. So yeah, it was some experience. Then it cleared up, and it was amazing. It was hot afterwards.
The pictures look like blazing sunshine. So.
But then it didn't end there. Then on the Sunday we watched Parma versus Sampdoria, which not much cover there at all. But it was a blazing hot day, and absolutely bizarre. They've got some sort of friendship thing going on, and they were singing each other's names and songs and singing joint songs.
Wow.
Parma, Sampdoria, things like that, and I just couldn't get my head around it. Because 1 minute I was a bit worried because the two lads I went with both bought Parma shirts because Parma are at home.
And you're in the Sampdoria.
We were in the Sampdoria end. Looking back now, the sort of ultras were behind the goals, And then I think it was the Palmer end, but Sampdoria have got a bigger following and just snapped up those tickets and we're allowed because they've got this friendship thing going on. So it was a bit bizarre. But yeah, finished 1-1. So good weekend. Thanks for being up. And if anyone's still awake at home, we do have some questions in front of us, and I think we should get right to it. Who would like to go first, Jeffrey?
I'll ask the first one.
Okay.
Have I stitched myself up?
Possibly.
We'll find out. Right. My son has suddenly decided that he wants to stop playing football. He is 12 years old and a pretty decent player. I don't want him to quit, nor do his coaches, but he's made up his mind. It's caused quite a bit of friction between us. Can you give me some advice, please?
Well, this has happened to me recently, as we touched on, I think, in the last episode. My son just turned 14, decided to quit in the summer, so he was 13, just before he was 14. And it's a very, very difficult one, especially for me, where football's been my life, and he's come to coaching sessions and been part of what we've done at Pez's for a long, long time. And it is difficult for parents, but what I will say is, it is okay to quit. So I've written that it is okay for him to quit, and it is okay for your child to quit. And I've written here that adults change their hobbies and quit stuff all the time, and no one ever bats an eyelid at that. But when kids suddenly decide to change their hobbies, we get, almost a little bit offended by it, especially if we've spent a lot of time taking them around in the car and thrown a lot of money at it and bought uniforms or kits and boots, whatever it might be. And maybe even when our own identity is a little bit tied up with our child's activity, whatever that may be. So if you're the sort of parent that goes to every training, every match, drives them there, talks about it all the time, your social media posts are all about how they've got on, how the team's done, and it's your topic of conversation with your other friends a lot of the time, and then your child decides that they don't want to play anymore, it can be very, very difficult. It's a change of lifestyle, isn't it? Some kids, it's their whole week, 3 or 4 weekends, and then 3 or 4 training sessions during the week, and it's hard for the whole family to adapt or accept the fact that they don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and when you say about a parent's ego becoming invested in it, it's really hard not to, isn't it? Because you want to be excited about what you think's your child's passion, and you want to kind of back them in a way, don't you, to support them as much as you can. I'd written down in my extensive notes, and it's a very cliche thing to say, and it's almost like a breakup with somebody in a way, isn't it? I've said sometimes if you love something, you have to let it go. So I'm sure I've read with really young children, when they stop and pause and stare at something, that's going to be the thing that's their passion and their fire in their belly. So if they have walked past a game of football and they've stopped and they've been so intrigued that they've stopped and they're staring, they don't really know what else is going on around them, that's when you know what their passion is. And if the passion isn't there, you can't force it, can you? And it may well come back around. So my nephew started coming at the same time as a lot of our current under-16s at Wessex Futsal Club, to the Pez's kickstart sessions when they were, 3-4 years of age.
Yeah.
I was 4 years old probably. And he loved it, and then we shuffled the coaches around and had some extra sessions, and I couldn't go anymore. And it's not me being big-headed, it's just Uncle Geoff wasn't there, and he didn't really want to go if Uncle Geoff wasn't there. So he stopped from that age until probably school year 6. So how old's that, Pez, off the top of your head?
School year
10s,
6
11s?
is under 11s.
Yeah, so, and he came back at age 10, 11, and now he's in the under-16s and one of the best youth goalkeepers we had. And again, that's not just Uncle Geoff bigging up his nephew, but it's just, it did come back around again, and no one forced it, and the parents definitely weren't going to do it because they got a good understanding of child psychology and all that kind of things, and eventually he found his way back into something, and he's as passionate, if not more passionate, than some of the others that stayed the whole way through.
Yeah, very organic.
Yeah.
Might be a good word. I also wrote, never force them to play. They might return in time, but not if you force it. Force only attracts counterforce, and much less likely to come back to it in time.
Unfortunately, that's probably not the answer a parent
No.
wants to hear. They want to hear a way of getting their child back into playing football now, don't they? But
Yeah, it was hard for me, and I've written it in my notes. It felt like it was a part of their childhood finishing. It was like, this is part of my boy now turning into a man, making his own decisions, having his own view of the world, and it just felt like a massive change, and it is upsetting. My advice, which is what they've asked for, would be to find out why for a start, and be supportive, and to try as hard as it is to take the emotion out of it. So if you can do that, and then if you can take the emotion out of it, it's a lot easier to find out why. And it might be that it's a reason that can be rectified, and then they might go back to it. I've written a few reasons why people quit sports. Pressure, could be a lack of confidence for a number of reasons. It could be a bit of groups forming within the team, some cliques, maybe even a bit of teasing and bullying, you never know. It might be they don't get on with the manager. My boy quit his team when he was a lot younger because he didn't get on with the way that the manager was. Burnout. Some of these kids have been playing since they're 4 or 5, and get to 13, 14, and how old is this one? They're 12. So get to 12 and they've not done a lot else. And they're at the age where they're starting to develop other interests, other passions. They can see a lot more things now on social media, and see other children doing other things, and then they get other interests. So try and find out why, and it might be something that you can sort out, or just a change of team, or I don't think there's anything wrong with having a season's break either. And I know I'm going to say this, Geoff, but putting them in for a season of futsal, which has happened with a few kids that have fallen out of love with football, have gone in and had a season with you at futsal, and then unfortunately for you get the passion back for it all again. Well done, Geoff. And then off they go again back to football, with their passion for the sport reignited. But as a parent, I think you should encourage them to take up other activities. So my lads tried stagecoach, didn't enjoy that. Cadets, which he really liked to start with, and then something happened there that he didn't want to do that anymore. Obviously futsal, which he loved, football for years, and now his passion is boxing. And he's pretty good at it because of the footwork he's got from the coaching he's had at Pez's and Wessex. So he moves really, really well, and he's really taken to it. So I've been supportive for the fact I want to try something new, and although I don't know much about boxing, I do like it, and I'm just happy that he's still doing something. If he was just lying in bed all weekend and just playing Fortnite or something, then it might be different. But if you can find and encourage them to go and have a look and try lots of different things until they stumble across maybe just something else that ignites that passion.
Good answers, Pez.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah,
It's because I've been in it.
Yeah.
In the deep end. And it still upsets me now. But that's alright, he doesn't listen to this because he's not into football anymore. So maybe we start a boxing podcast.
We should say to the listeners that we turned the table around this week, didn't we? Last time we did a podcast, we were next to each other, and now we can gaze into each other's eyes. I can see the emotion.
Yes. Actually, he did one of these podcasts. So if people go back and have a look through and listen to them, which I know they do when they discover it, did a podcast with a nearly 10-year-old. So obviously he was 9 at the time, which I listened back to. It's the only one I've ever listened back to. I don't like listening to my own voice. Most people don't like listening to my voice anyway. But
I don't think I knew about that one, so
yeah,
if you could send that to me, I'll listen to it.
Go and have a look, it's on there. It's on Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else you get your podcast from, Jeffrey. But please make sure you subscribe. Thank you. Shall we move on?
Yeah, question number 2 is yours.
Good. Phew, right. My son doesn't like watching football with me. He plays in a team, but when a big game is on, he'd rather go upstairs and play on his Xbox. I feel I learned the most about the game by watching all the time. What are your thoughts? I'll bat this one over to you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I like it because I also feel I learned a lot by watching the game and maybe even watching the pundits talking about the game and picking up things back in the day. Who are the 2 presenters that don't do it anymore? I can't think. Live out in Dubai, don't they, or somewhere? Andy Gray.
And Andy Gray, yeah.
I used to watch that all the time as much as I could and just try and soak it up. And, because we didn't get much coaching really, did we, back in the day? I don't know about you, but
no,
that was where I'd pick up most of my stuff. So I can kind of sympathise with the question asker, because I'd agree that I picked up a lot from watching the game and listening to the pundits and commentators. But it's very similar to the last question in that you can't really force it either, can you? Because I'll go back to my nephew again. What sparked his passion for the game just randomly one Sunday morning, because it was match of the day was too late on a Saturday night. He woke up, went downstairs on his own and put match of the day on and watched the whole programme, and every week after that carried on doing the same thing, and that's when he asked to come back to the coaching sessions. So it might just happen. It just can't be forced again.
Yeah, I mean, I love watching games with my lad, but it's become rarer. There's just too many distractions nowadays, and even if he does, he's on his Switch or he's on his phone. It has to be a really big game or something that's really exciting, and then he'll sort of stick it out, but then he'll often just go, I'm going to go and chill in my room for a bit, and then he's gone. But I have great memories of watching football with my dad, till he got to sort of the age I am now, and then just fall asleep for it like I do most games now. Before you know it, you're nodding off. But yeah, you're right, you can't force it, but we all like our kids to be into the same things as us and watch them together. But in terms of learning from it, I actually think children learn quite a lot from FIFA about tactics and timing tackles, believe it or not, and when to release the ball and keeping possession, and it's quite, the idea behind it's quite close to the real thing, obviously, much more it was when I was playing Peter Beardsley soccer on the Commodore 64 anyway, Jeff. So maybe how we learnt a bit of tactics and things from listening to them talk, they're learning a bit from actually being involved on FIFA.
I'm going to struggle for the rest of this podcast now. I'm going to be thinking about how can I get to play Peter Beardsley on the Commodore 64.
Amazing game. Right, shall we move on?
Yeah, well, just one more thing.
Oh, go on.
Maybe if you can get to a live game, it might not be Premier League or Championship because of ticket prices and how much travel can cost or something, if that's an issue, but maybe just a local game, and just soak in a match day environment and see if that might spark something between, was it dad and son, or was it?
Doesn't actually say, it just says my son.
Okay.
I think it does work very well when the children are a bit older and they've kind of got a position that they prefer or that they play a lot of. So you might be able to take them to a game and say, just watch how their centre half deals with this, and watch their movement. Or if there's a striker, watch their movement in the box. And you can do that on the TV as well. They don't have to watch the whole game. But you could say, oh, come and watch this centre forward and look how they hold up the ball, or whatever it might be. You could even pause it and shout through, come and have a look at this. Whatever it might be. They used to do player cam, didn't they, in our day? I don't think they do it anymore. Might be wrong. But that was always a good one as well.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Maybe even phrase questions so that you're not leading it. So who do you think's the best player on the pitch and why, and what are they doing that's different to somebody else? Because that might help to spark it rather than it coming from the parent. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What I've just said?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a good way with say like learning how a modern fullback gets forward and gets crosses in the box and all that type of stuff, so that they might learn their role a little bit easier. But for the young ones, it's just about enjoying the experience of watching it with mum and dad and developing a passion for the game.
Probably having a burger.
Probably having a burger. Why not?
At half time, yeah.
I had a few at the weekend. It shows. Right. Question number 3. That's your one, Geoff.
That's a bit shorter, this one.
Yes.
I live in an area where we have lots of football clubs, franchises and soccer schools. How do I know which one might be best for my child to attend?
Cool. The age-old question, Jeffrey.
I feel like we've answered similar questions
Yes.
a few times in the past, maybe.
Yeah, probably lots. But it's probably clearly the most asked question. It's the one I get asked a lot. Mum and dad come to me and say, just get into football, we don't know anything about it. My background was this, and I used to play rugby or whatever it might be. We don't know much about football. And there's this team that play in this league, and this team and that franchise, and this, and foundation or whatever it might be, and it's very, very confusing. It is a bit of a minefield, and it's much more difficult than when I was a lad. Your mates who you played at school, you all played together for whatever team it was, normally your local village or certain area, and that was it. That was your team. And it's very competitive, Geoff, and I don't think it's good for development. I know we've touched on it a lot with when youth football's highly competitive at a young age, then it becomes about try to recruit players, results, wins, and unfortunately, and it's just been getting quite a bit of press recently, a lot of poaching and tapping up, as the article was headed that I read. So tapping.
I think I've seen that as well online somewhere.
Tapping up is an actual real thing in children's football, going right down to 5 and 6 year olds being tapped up by other children's from their sort of. If a child goes to a school with their kid and they play for a rival team, it'd be, go and have a word with them, try and get them to sign for us next season, and even going to watch games when you haven't got a game and approaching parents on the sideline. It all happens for this desperation of trying to win games of football. It's a bit sad, really, isn't it? But it is the world that we live in. But when football becomes about results and recruitment, the development by default does go out the window, because there's not enough time to do both, really. You're recruiting, you're trying to organise a group to win a game of football, and actually working on your whole group's individual needs and weaknesses and individual strengths and bits about the game they need to work on tends to go out the window a little bit.
On the flip side of that, though, just trying to put a positive spin on it.
Yeah, I missed a negative, sorry. I'll have a swig of water.
We do live in a time of social media, and we spend a lot of our time slating it because of, we've talked about comparison being a thief of joy when Betsy's been on before, haven't we? And but you can compare and contrast what clubs, franchises, soccer schools are putting out on their social media and see if their messages that they're sending out align with your values that you and the way that you want to bring your child up, can't you? So you could compare and contrast and try and find the best fit from you, as well as speaking, how do I put this? I'm just going to say it. Speaking to good parents out there that are looking for the same things that you're looking for, which is kind of that family feel environment and the nice club that's going to, or soccer schools or franchise, whichever one it is that fits you best, can't you? So you could do some research that you maybe couldn't do in the past, and if all the stuff online is, well done, we won and we scored this many goals and this player got man of the match or player of the match or whatever the terminology is these days, then that might not be the right club for you. It might be the right club for you because that's exactly what you want. I don't know, but
yeah, well, I think that's the starting point, isn't it? Find out what you want. What's your end goal? Your end game. And if it's to have a bedroom full of plastic trophies and medals, etc., and Facebook posts and all of that kind of stuff of wins and glory days, and living through your child.
You've got a lot full of them, haven't you?
Yeah, a lot full of them. Yeah, I have. Now my sons are all up there next to them in a slightly smaller box. Oh dear. Thanks for bringing that up again, Geoff. Yeah, it's difficult, but find out what your values are and what you want out of it, and then that's a good starting point. And then, as you said, Jeffrey, then maybe go having a look and ask some questions.
And maybe don't get fooled by the coaches that are always correcting players and thinking that must be a really good session because the coach keeps stopping them and telling them how it should be, because you think that's exactly what your child wants or needs, and more often than not it's the opposite, isn't it, Pez?
Yeah, and don't want to get too deep into it because there's some great places out there and some great people that are involved in these clubs, and if it wasn't for a lot of volunteers, although there's a lot of paid coaches now as well, but if it wasn't for these people, there wouldn't be a game. So don't want to be too critical. My one big thing would be very wary of taking your child anywhere where they release players from a young age. There's no need to release players. Even the pro clubs, I don't like it and would love there to be a different way of them doing it. So for someone's dad, what it tends to be, running a grassroots team, has decided that a couple of kids aren't good enough and then says, sorry, you're not good enough for my team anymore because you're not helping us win a game. We're going to hold trials in the summer and you've all got a trial for your places, but we're going to release you. Not good, not right, doesn't sit well with me and my morals. I might be getting old, Geoff, but I don't think any child should trial for their own place in a club. If they've given their time up for you and they're turning up for training and they're doing their best, you need to do the same for them. Do your best by them and stick by them. I know a lot of clubs get around this by having A, B, C teams, and that is a lot better than just releasing them totally. But I don't like it. So maybe avoid teams that are always holding trials every summer for this, that and the other. And it happens all the time, and then kids are trialling for their own place in the team. Because what that does is just builds up pressure for the kids that are there. Then they don't try things because they're terrified of making mistakes. And then they don't develop and fulfill their potential, in a nutshell. So
yeah, I don't know if I've said this on previous episodes, but club, I don't know what the definition of club is, but a club, you should feel like you belong, and everything you've just said there would make somebody feel like maybe they don't always deserve to belong there. So if you're a part of a club, if it's a book club or whatever it is, you should feel like you're involved and you're there as long as you want to keep going, shouldn't you?
I don't think it happens in any other activity, hobby, sport that I can think of. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe rugby and things like that it does, but I just feel like once you become under the club's banner, you're part of the family and you're looked after.
Whatever your level is, whatever your involvement is, and it might not even be a player in that sport, it might be you find something else that's your passion, and you might end up commentating for the games, or you might end up filming the games, or you might do help with the admin and the kit wash or whatever it might be, but you should always...
It's your club.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're not coming back anymore because we've just...
Yeah. My lad's mate at school scored 20 goals for someone last season. We're bringing him in and you're out.
To try and win the local league. Yeah, cheers.
Yeah. I mean, I've written here, don't base it on results or what league a team is in, but the quality of training sessions, fairness, friendships and fun. I think that was the end of my extensive notes for that one, Geoff.
Cool. Next question.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, is it me?
Yeah, 4's you.
Oh, wow, this is a biggie. I'm glad I'm asking it. Do you think that mindset is more important than talent? Jeffrey.
That is straight over to me. Cheers, Pez.
Yeah, well, we were going to save this one for Betsy, who we should say our resident psychologist, sports psychologist. has a bit of a cough, and it wasn't the best thing for a podcast, so she's had to duck out of today's episode. But we left that one in there, so we'll give it a little go, and then maybe we can ask her when she's back as well. What are you thinking, Geoff? Or are you still scribbling on your extensive notes?
I'm just making a little arrow so I remember that one's ready for Betsy.
Okay.
Mindset more important than talent, or the other way around.
Well, I've written some notes. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go on then.
Well, I've written, I don't believe anyone is born with talent. Innate attributes, yes, that might make them more conducive to the game. Might be born more athletic, or they might move a little bit better, whatever it might be quick, might be born with fast twitch muscle fibres. So there are attributes, and it might take...
Might be born in September rather than...
Yes, there's that as well. So you might have, from a young age, had a year's more coaching than people in your own age group. But to be a top player, you have to train very, very hard, and you have to listen, and you have to put the hours in. It doesn't matter if you're talented or not. It might take one player 1,000 hours to become good at something, and it might take a player 5,000 hours to become good at something, or the magic 10,000 hours rule. But that's different across the children. But all of them need to work hard and train. Training's how players get good. And therefore, it takes a good mindset rather than talent, because it takes a good mindset to train well. So I've gone with mindset's much more important than talent. If you can get both, like a Ronaldo, who's obviously got innate attributes, talented, and worked unbelievably hard, harder than anyone else at any of his clubs by all accounts, then you really have got the magic there. But there's plenty of good kids. The good kids come into the soccer school and they bang in a few goals for their team and stuff. They come in, but they don't want to train. And when's it match time? All that kind of stuff. And they just don't want to do the training. You think, well, you're only going to get so far. You're not going to fulfill whatever potential you've got because you're not training. Training's the important thing. So a kid that comes in that's not banging in 20 goals but's got the mindset to train will eventually fulfill their potential, whatever that might be.
Thank goodness Ronaldo is ugly and not a good looking bloke. Otherwise you might be quite jealous of him. Hey,
I know. It'd be awful, wouldn't it?
One thing I've always picked up from you is if you want something, you kind of put it down on paper and then work your way back from it. And if you look at the top players and how they've got where they are, they'll tell you so many stories, won't they, of players that were much better than them but didn't have the mindset or the attitude and the desire that they had, and they kept showing up and look where they ended up. So talent will get you so far, won't it? But the mindset will take you
When I was with
where
the
your potential is.
first teams with Southampton and Charlton, I used to ask the players all the time because I was intrigued. And I can't remember one that said, oh yeah, I was by far the best. It's always, oh no, there was someone in my year who was frighteningly good. Even in their class, there was people in their own class of 30 that were better than them. And they say, a little bit of opportunity, to be fair, but all backed up with hard work, putting in the hours, training at their strengths, training at their weaknesses. Maybe Jimmy Floyd Hasselback. No, even he said there was people better than him, I'm sure. Although I did hear Darren Bent, who I was with at Charlton on TalkSport the other day, saying how much advanced he was of everybody else around him.
Yeah, there's always an exception, isn't there? I think everyone always knew Michael Owen was going to be Michael Owen.
Yeah.
But generally, most will say Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville, that there was far better players than them.
Yeah, especially when they've been in the youth game. I mean, I remember when I was with Southampton youth, name drop again, with Gareth Bale, Theo Walcott, that era. They would talk about players from other clubs, especially that they were going to go and play that weekend. Just be like, oh my God, I've got to mark this player, he's amazing. I remember those lads talking about, is it Tom Huddleston? I think he was their age group. How amazing he was and what a unit he was, and he could do anything with the ball. And and back then Gareth was quite a hard-working fullback, and eventually with hard work and practicing his free kicks and his dead balls and his pace and stuff, he went on to be at one point the best player in the world, or one of the best players in the world. So mindset for me, I've lost what the question is, but mindset
or talent. Yeah,
I think, sorry Geoff, I don't want to rant, but I think a lot of parents think that their children are naturally talented, especially if they're playing in a league where they're doing really, really well, and they've got coaches saying, your child's talented, they're doing really, really well, and especially if other teams are going, we'd love your kids to come and play in our team, and they'd fit in really well here and they'd help us win the league, and you can't help but getting sucked into that a little bit. And the praise and the adulation is addictive, and training becomes the least of the priority. My advice to parents is training is how you're going to get good. Footballers train more than they play.
I think that's a question coming up later, actually. What you just
covered a little bit there. Shall I save my rant for then, Geoff?
Yeah, and something in this conversation, I don't know, just reminded me about something from question number 2, which was about watching football with your son, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I just remembered, whilst you were talking, I've read in the past, but several times recently, Peter Crouch has said it again recently, Tottenham had a fullback, was it Asokota?
Yeah.
He never even knew which team he was playing against on the weekend.
I did hear this.
He would just turn up, go to work, which was playing football, and then go to training, and you turn up on a match day and he didn't watch any football, so he knew nothing about the opposition. But
even though they've been supposed to study,
everyone would say what a player he was, so I wouldn't worry too much about question number 2. But it's just reminded me, I don't know what it was that triggered that, so I just thought that was a good point to throw back in there, which I did mean to say. But
well, that's the beauty of long form podcast, Geoff.
Yeah.
Just go back and forth as we choose.
You keep ranting and I'll keep answering questions from 2 questions ago.
I just love a rant. It's come in my old age. And there's also growth mindset and fixed mindset that we've discussed many times before. And I think to achieve anything, you really need a growth mindset. So you need to try and encourage your child through the things that you say, leading by example, etc. I hate that when you say etc. because it's like you've forgotten what you're going to say, but etc. because I forgot what I was going to say. To encourage a growth mindset, and a growth mindset is when a child realises that they're getting out of something what they're putting in. So the energy and the effort and the enthusiasm they're putting into it, they're getting out of it, and that their talent's not just natural. And I see it black and white now in my sessions, Geoff. I can see the split of growth mindsets and fixed mindsets. And the fixed mindsets, when you ask them to do something, we'll go and kick the ball against the wall or the goals. They don't want to be seen to not be good at anything, because some of these kids are bigger and stronger than the others. They're bowling kids out of the way in matches. They're scoring hatfuls of goals, and everyone's telling them how good they are. And then I'm asking them, well, can you do this? Can you do that? And they can't do it. And they don't like it.
Yeah, do you think percentage-wise over the years that fear of challenge and the fixed mindset numbers have gone up in your sessions?
Massively more fixed mindsets now, because it's harder to undo the damage that's being done with their clubs and the other adults that are involved in their development, and it's not done on purpose. I think probably social media, where children know if they score 3-4 goals. I saw one at the weekend, a friend of mine's kid scored 9 in a game, and there was a picture of him with his 9 fingers up. I won't name him. And these kids know that they're being put on social media and things. And so if your kid scored 9 goals at the weekend and then they come into my training session and they can't do something, they can't pass on their left foot or whatever, then they just go through the motions to get through that bit to find something that they can be good at, because everyone's telling them they're good and they can't get it into their head. But I'm a good footballer, I should be able to do this. I don't want people to know I've got a weakness. The kids that are getting on really well, and the ones who end up fulfilling their potential are the ones who see training as a challenge and things that they can't do as a challenge to overcome to help them improve. They see a direct correlation between how well they're training to how much they're progressing. And when a child gets that, wow, they just go through the roof, and the world's their oyster. It's happened with one recently, is at my session last night, this season, so only the last few weeks. He's just realised I'm getting better and better and better, and it's because I'm training really well, I'm training really hard, and he can't get enough of it. Now that kid will fly now. He'll go above a lot of the rest who might be slightly older in the group and have got a good kick and scoring lots of goals and whatever it might be, and bullying other kids out of the way, legally obviously, within the rules of the game. But that is so important. I don't know if I've gone on a bit of a tangent there about mindset.
No,
Jeff,
I think this question is kind of the balance and the yin and the yang about what we talk about a lot of the time on phone conversations or whenever we're in.
Love a phone chat, don't we?
Yeah, and it's that balance between, okay, your child's becoming talented, and that's almost to the point where if the parents aren't careful, they almost can take over. And because what you were saying about the parents earlier, I've been saying this a lot recently. It's every child is special, but they're not more special than the next child. So yes, your child is special, but I've got no evidence to back this up, but I don't know if most parents biologically are kind of programmed to think that their child is more special than anybody else's child.
Well, there is a stat, I can't remember, it's like 80s or in the 90% of parents think that their child is gifted or special at something.
Okay, well,
so if they're playing football, probably that stat's the same. So 80-90% of parents think that their child's the best player, and they might just need an opportunity to show it, or the right coach to bring it out of them, which is one of the reasons why they chase it around and the grass might be greener somewhere else, because they're just looking for that one person that might bring it out of them, because of course their child's naturally
So without
gifted.
dismissing all the other questions, I think this could be one of the most important ones that we can cover, because if your child is training really well and then getting really good and then becoming talented, and then you move them out of that environment because you think they're ready for their next challenge or whatever it might be.
Well, that happens. They just want to show them off. Look how good my kid's in, and then they forget somewhere on the line, Jeff, that it's the training
and that mindset
that's helped them get to that level, and then they stop doing it. It's
almost like you can change that open mindset to a fixed mindset, and you're thinking you're helping the child when actually you're doing the reverse, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And you asked about, has that changed? I think it has. I think there's a lot more fixed mindset. I think a lot of children don't stick around at one club or wherever they're learning their football for as long as they used to. And I think this is one of the reasons that the parents pull them out and get them into a Saturday team, a Sunday team. I think also a lot of parents, how do I put this? Back in the day when I started, when children were with us for 3, 4, 5, 6 years and they got really good, and a lot of them went on to pro academies and things like that because they'd worked hard, they had a growth mindset, and they put in the hours and the effort. I think the parents were a lot more grateful then for the help and support you've given that child. Now it seems to be there's an attitude more of, my child's special, naturally talented, someone would have brought that out in him anyway. If it wasn't you, it would have been someone else. So kind of thanks, but they'd have got there anyway because my child's special and naturally gifted. And now they just need an opportunity to show someone what they can do. And it becomes about, I've got to try and get my child to be in the right place at the right time then for a scout or someone else at a higher level to spot what they already know, that the child's talented. And actually it all boils down to the child's growth mindset and what he's doing at training. That's
the environment and their mindset.
Environment and mindset.
So be grateful if you found a decent environment and maybe don't just pat your coach on the back and say thanks for everything you've done, but my child was going to get there anyway.
Yeah, am I sounding bitter and twisted? I don't know. Perhaps I am.
We are old and bitter and twisted, Pez. So
Maybe it's part of our
you
charm.
can be as old and bitter and twisted as you like. I know you didn't say old, but
I'll tell you what it is, though, Jeff. I've been doing it so long now, I actually get upset. And I mean genuinely upset when I'm coaching children who I think have got potential and then suddenly they disappear. And they're going somewhere where they're told, stop, stand still, just doing team football, the individual stuff's gone out of the window. And I've seen it so many times now, and those children not fulfil the potential I know they've got because I've been doing it a long time. It almost brings me to tears, especially with someone that I've formed a bond with and an attachment. It's the hardest part of my job by far.
Yeah, well.
And the worst part of the job.
Same for me, boss. I'll echo that. So in answer to question number 4, do you think that mindset is more important than talent?
We are on question 4. Jeez.
Yes, we think mindset is more important than talent. But talent will come in the right environment with the right mindset. And if you've got both of those things, be grateful. Stick at it.
Plenty more about this in my book that's coming out. We're ready to move on.
Question number 5?
Yeah, cool. I'll get tired again.
So
it's my
turn to read one, isn't
it? Hit me then. Go on.
What do you think the future of youth football will look like in terms of developing players, and what would you like to see?
Crikey. I have written a few things down here. A bit higgledy-piggledy and not in much order. Things I would like to see. Should we start with that? I would like to see, and we've touched on this, not last one, I think the episode before, more governance for elite leagues and more governance for private coaches. That is something I would like to see, Jeff, so that somebody can't just set up a manufactured team, poach the players, enter the JPL, promise the earth, and just be let loose. I think there should be governments and tiers within that, so you will be categorised, especially if you are charging money. And I'm a paid soccer school, and I'm quite happy for that to happen. So all your safeguardings and stuff, okay, they get done through the FA, but I think it might be even more important when you're calling yourself elite and pathway to pro football and whatever else terminology is used out there. And you're releasing kids. If you're releasing kids, there needs to be governance. God, I'm getting emotional about it again, because you can't just tell a child of 7, 8, 9, sometimes 6, whatever it might be, that they're not good enough to play something that they love. It's not right. And if you are going to go down that route, you need to know how to do it without affecting that child's mental health. And it shouldn't be, no offence, someone's dad who's been, asked to do the job, deciding that child's not good enough, which can affect that child's mental health. They need some sort of training. And I went out and did a course on children's mental health because I was worried about it, and we've never released a player in our lives. But I just felt it was important to be in the know. And I just think a lot of people just do what they want, Jeff. Private coaches are the same.
But they're allowed to, aren't they? Because no one is audited. There's no Ofsted. There's no auditing for
exactly
cowboy coaches doing what they want.
There's 16-year-olds out there now, no offence to them, but they've not had a lot of experience setting up one-to-one coaching schools and then getting a nice logo and stuff and bag of balls, a few cones, and then they look for drills on the internet and away they go. But they've got no idea of how to communicate with children.
And fair play to
mindset.
Those young people that are doing that, trying to go and do what they love. But there should be an apprenticeship. You wouldn't have somebody who hasn't got...
I wouldn't discourage it. Sorry, that sounded...
Yeah, you wouldn't have someone who hasn't done their apprenticeship in bricklaying come and build your house, would you? You just wouldn't.
These are your
trust
kids
them.
you're trusting them with.
Yeah, exactly.
They're precious kids.
Some people might think, well, it's not that important, but we obviously do, don't we? Otherwise we wouldn't be
Yeah, because we know the damage
about.
that can be done to the growth mindset and developing a fixed mindset, mental health you know, bad habits that they can actually coach into the children. There's a lot more harm that can be done than good with private coaching and elite leagues. So yeah, went in a bit deep there, but some governance and some categorizations and some, what should I call it, inspections, random inspections. I know the child welfare officer, what do I call it, part of the FA. I've seen an email recently saying that to send your details in about where your training sessions are and stuff, because there'll be spot checks to check that the safeguarding and things are all been done, which is brilliant, but it needs to be more. And especially with, I mean, private coaches do what they like. I mean, are any of these private coaches, when they're getting kids come to them and their parents saying, can I have a look at your safeguarding, your first aid, your qualifications, your insurance? I don't think so. Maybe they are.
It's all.
I've been doing it for years and no one's ever asked me.
Yeah.
And I've got the lot.
I did start at one point making little posters with who the child welfare officers were and things like that. I'm going to get back to that now, actually. I haven't talked about it today, and so everyone's aware who they can go and speak to if they need to.
Yeah, and then a register for these places so parents can type in Joe Blogs one-to-one coaching, and it can come up with their qualifications and that they're registered, that they're safe, and also for elite leagues. You get that from being a Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, however they choose to do it. But it can be done. And with the money that's in the game and the money that some of these leagues generate, it should be done.
Yeah, no, it's all good points. So maybe they can work towards being a Category 4, whatever it is, and it has to meet these criteria.
Well, they do in the pro game, and why, you know, kids are kids, whether in the pro game or whether they're in grassroots, and these elite leagues are grassroots football. They might say they're bridging the gap between the two, but they're still grassroots, but not governed. Yet they're doing similar things like releasing players like the pro clubs do, but they have psychologists and training and things like that to deal with the possible fallout.
So the other part of the question.
I've still got other stuff I'd like to see.
Okay, sorry. You keep going.
I told you, I made some notes, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And reason I wanted to get that one in there is because you'll love this one. More futsal than small-sided games. So I'd love to see an increase in futsal leagues, money in the game. I'd like to see pro clubs jump on board, and there'll be Liverpool's, Chelsea's, Arsenal's, Tottenham's, maybe even if it's just for some summer leagues, so when we're all dying for our football fix, we can tune in and watch some futsal, and maybe released players from these clubs can play in those things, or trialists or whatever it might be. Get it on the TV, throw some money at it, and then there might be an option for some of these kids to play futsal and earn a living that way, as if it doesn't work out at football, or if they prefer it. You know, I'd love to see a Jordan Matthews from Wessex being able to make his living from it, and if he can make his living from it, he would be able to train more, and then he'd be a better player, and the national game would improve, and so on and so forth. So futsal and small-sided games, because it's amazing at accelerating the development of children. I've put professional clubs helping grassroots leagues. I've talked about this before. So say in our area we've got Southampton Football Club. They could, let's pick a local league, they could sponsor the Tyro League, and they could have coaches that go in and do some coaching for all the teams and form some bonds and some friendships, and invite a team down every now and again to the training ground, whatever it might be, host a tournament there, and that way they also get the pick of the best players, because they're keeping an eye on them, and they don't need to, you know, be a rat race and get them all in so quickly. They can monitor these kids for years, and if they release a player, they can have a club locally that they recommend them to, and can still be worked with and looked after by a professional coach. Let's have it right, they've got the money to do this type of thing. Players that get released to be invited to play in leagues under the pro club, so maybe futsal league I've put. So touched on that one already. Oh God, there's more. This is one I really, really like, Geoff. Controversial, but in future, I would like to see football training become more like boxing gyms, and I'll explain. So players working on different aspects of their game individually. So you could go to a training session and there would be strikers working on striking the ball. There might be right-footed players all working with their left foot. There might be players who are working on their fitness. There might be players working on their fast feet and movement. Might be players working on ball mastery, rotating round, however it might be. I mean, I go pick up my lad from boxing, and there's lads doing pads, there's lads sparring, there's lads doing the speed bag, the heavy bag, skipping, all different aspects that's going to help them improve individually. I think in 50 years' time we might look back and go, God, we were in the dark ages back then. And all these kids were just thrown in to play team football and learning on the job, which is what they're doing. As soon as a kid's into football, under sevens, go and play. Yeah, we'll work it out from there. We'll learn on the job. So I would like that. I think that's my list of what I would like to see. Anything you'd like to see, Geoff? Because I'm sort of hogging the
No, I love that
airtime
that
now.
last one. And there have been a few things that have popped up where they look a little bit more like what you've just described. And there's one down in Bournemouth, isn't there? I can't remember what it's called. Football Lab or something like that, where there's lots more interactive individual stuff that you can go and train.
Yeah, like the interactive passing things and get your scores and all of that. And obviously that'd be very expensive for clubs to have, but there are alternatives. And maybe it's difficult because you'd need a lot of different coaches, but my lad's boxing, they've got one, maybe two coaches, and they quickly explain what they want and they let them get on with it.
Just go around and tweak technique here and there.
Absolutely. Does anyone need any help? And from a distance you can see, every time you throw in that right hook, you're dropping your guard on your left, so keep that up, lad, and do this, that and the other, and you go around and
then
help people individually.
And you move on to the next one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Even if it's just 1 or 2 times a week with that before you organise team training
or just alongside it throughout, it would be
1v1s and stuff is like your equivalent of your sparring maybe, and your small sided games. I just think football training could be maximised, or the time could be maximised so much better than it is. And I like to think we do a pretty good job at it, but it doesn't look like conventional football, so we have to keep preaching the good preach and fighting the good fight and educating people.
Write a book and do a podcast to explain it.
Yeah. Who'd have thought it? Maybe it'll work. Who knows? What was the question? What do I think will happen? What would I like to see? So that's what I'd like to see. Unfortunately, what I think might happen is there'll be a generation of players that have the best boots, private one-to-one coaches, play in elite leagues, but when it gets to progressing to another level and getting signed by pro clubs, I think it'll be more the children who can't afford to play Saturdays and Sundays, and maybe come from estates, play in cages and multi-use games areas in the big cities, and they will kind of naturally develop a hunger, a desire, technical ability, how to look after themselves a little bit, because they'll be playing sort of on their own and with mixed ages, mixed abilities. So they'll become strong, adaptable, savvy, if you like, very intelligent, football-wise, sort of street savvy, if you like. And it might be that more children come from that environment in future to become professionals or professional academies than the children that have got all the advantages, if you like.
So street smarts and nous over all the gear, no idea. That's what you're saying.
A little bit. Yeah. But it's a difficult one, because I wanted my kids to have the best boots and all that. You've got to get the balance right. But I just think that children now, with all the advantages, lose something. You know, in our area, if you play for a nice little village team and everything's nicey nice, and you've got all the best things. You're playing Saturdays and Sundays, and then you've got these children who might not have a lot, from Southampton inner city and London's and Birmingham's and Sheffield's and wherever it might be, Liverpool's, Manchester's, I think Newcastle's, you know, the list is endless. I think they will eventually possibly be the hotbeds for players signing at pro clubs. Might be wrong, obviously. I often have Jeffrey, believe it or not, but it's just how I think it might go. And one thing I think that will happen in the game, which sort of touched on, but with pro players, I think in 10 years or so, most players will have a personal coach, technical coach. So now a lot of pro players obviously have, if they're at the top level, they've got their own chef, their own psychologist. A lot of them now have their own strength and conditioning coaches as well as what they get with the club. And I think the next step will be these players, even your Ronaldos of the world, will have a personal technical coach that will help them work on actually improving at football. Not within the team environment and tactics, but your basic fundamentals, passing, receiving, technical skill. I think that will become much more in years to come.
A bit like Anthony Joshua losing a couple of fights and then changing up his technical coach and the whole team. You might get a new technical coach in individually if you're at the season you might have done.
You'll get a team coach and you'll get a manager that organises them to win games of football. So whatever tactics that person wants to do, whatever formations they want to play, and they will get across what they want their player to do within that system to help them win a game and what their job and their roles and responsibilities are. The coach will help coach that, however they do it. But then there'll be another level where I think those players will have individual technical skill coaches from whatever position. Goalkeepers almost do already. Yeah. So they do separate training away. I imagine now, I mean, it's been a long time since I was in first team pro football, but they might even have footwork coaches now because it's become so important. I mean, players are getting dropped from teams because they can't play out from the back. David De Gea, you know, not great with his feet, can't get a club. Ramsdale, at the moment, I think they believe that Ray is better with his feet, which might fit into the system of playing out of the back better. It's become a real problem for keepers. They've been amazing at what they do for years and keeping the round thing out of the net, and now they've got to be footballers as well. So I imagine they're starting to get technical skill coaches as well. I mean, obviously they'll have to be careful that they don't overdo it and overtrain, but they've obviously become a bit more lax with it when it's come to them having their own strength and conditioning coaches and stuff. And they'll have their own therapists, masseurs, everything. Be a whole, entourage of people maybe in years to come. And I imagine, I've got nothing to back this up, but I imagine American football players and stuff like that have big entourages of private coaches and masseurs and things like that. But I don't know. Might have just made it up, but just got a feeling.
It's interesting, your insights into the future, Pez. I'm enjoying it.
Oh goodness, I feel absolutely whacked out now. Should we move on before I waffle anymore?
I was just going to say, you said about the keepers playing out from their feet, with their feet and stuff, and I don't know if you heard Pep Guardiola say the other day about someone asked him what he thinks the future of football will look like, and he said about he thinks goalkeepers will actually literally come out and play to create overloads, which is very futsal and go and fly goalkeeper in futsal, isn't it? So obviously having been involved at Barcelona so much and them being more than a club and having their hockey stadium and their futsal stadium next to Camp Nou or on the same grounds, really, isn't it? I wonder if he's seen that in futsal and that's what he thinks.
Maybe
because
that is very interesting.
A lot of trends have come from futsal, like when Barca played and Spain played without a striker, was similar to the futsal 4-0 formation, where you don't have your striker or your pivot, as it's called in futsal, as your main focal point, where you try and get it up to the striker and then have runners off the striker. You kind of invite pressure on, so the space is in behind by not having that focal point, so you're trying to play out of the pressure, which he's a very adaptive coach because he's got Haaland now, hasn't he? And he can play into a striker and they can play a bit differently, or but
do
both
whatever
ways.
He wants now,
yeah,
can't they?
literally. But
That is very interesting.
So that discussion around goalkeepers, that might be an insight a bit like yours that fits this question quite nicely. And things that I'd like to see more of is, like you've already covered, play more futsal. I'd actually like to see almost these elite grassroots leagues disappear and just do futsal, and that would be very controversial. But if kids played futsal from the earliest ages, whatever they start at, all the way through to under 16s, like they do in Brazil and then wherever else, then you'd have technically very good football players if they want to go and play football, but you'd also have a great futsal hotbed if they wanted to carry on playing futsal, and the sport would grow, and you'd have two pathways that could be equally as attractive, or almost as equally as attractive to play.
Unfortunately, it's just not in our DNA, is it? It's going to take a long time to for people to view futsal as more important or part of our culture. So Brazil, Spain, Portugal, maybe some other nations, it's sort of, they've grown up playing it. It's part of their DNA. It's what they do. They don't bat an eyelid at it. Over here, we're kind of sort of starting from scratch a little bit. But obviously, with you guys and others, big strides are being made. But yes, if they just played futsal up to about 16, there's no doubt the standard of football would improve in the country. We'd have better players, and for the people listening, their children would be a lot better at football. At the end of it, it depends what your end game is.
Yeah, I'd love to see schools do futsal. So, do schools really need to do football when kids are playing most nights of the week in their clubs and at weekends, Saturdays and Sundays? If schools don't really need to have schools teams anymore, because that used to be a thing, because not everyone got to play in clubs outside of school, I think, really, wasn't it? And it used to be a bigger deal. We used to play quite a lot, probably back in the day. Did you play for your school quite a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really see the point in school football anymore, to be honest. Like, maybe
it'll be on the PE syllabus, so that's where it is.
PE syllabus and lunchtimes maybe, but for how great would it be if every single secondary school with their sports halls did a term, 2 terms of futsal every year? It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? And you'd probably have more kids where that would be more attractive, whereas football might not be out in the cold, wet, muddy, wind and rain.
During the winter and stuff.
And
be ideal.
I can't think of anybody that wouldn't love that at school.
Cool. Just rewritten the future, Geoff. How does that feel?
It looks bright, doesn't it? If only we were in charge, Pez.
If only we were in charge. Goodness. Right, where are we at, Geoff?
Question number 6, so that'll be you.
Do you think it's more important to play more matches than it is to train? And we've touched on this a little bit already, haven't we?
Yeah.
And I'm always telling the parents and the children, whenever I can, you don't get good at football just by playing matches. You get good at football by training purposefully and well, and maximising your time and getting contact time with the ball. And people look at me as if I'm mad, and I'm like, well, work it out. I'm not going to go into the maths, because last time I did that, Betsy said, I don't think your maths are quite right. But if you broke down how long your child is on a ball in a match, and it obviously varies how many aside there are and how long those matches are depending on age groups, but it can be between maybe 1 minute and 3 minutes, something like that, in a match. If your kid's one of those who doesn't like to pass and a bit of a ball hogger, maybe slightly more by a few seconds. But you're averaging out the in-play time of the ball, which isn't that much, because it spends a lot of time out, especially in youth football. It's out for throw-ins, corners, goal kicks. You average out amongst the team and you'll be horrified how little time your child gets on the ball. And like I say, it could be, with under 7s, under 8s, about a minute per match. So you're playing Saturday and Sunday and you think you're getting all this football, but actually your kids had 2 minutes, maybe 3, contact time with the ball, which is not good enough to develop the skills and the techniques and the decisions needed to reach the level that they are possibly capable of. It's just mathematics, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think on the last episode that we did, you talked about a player where you were commentating on them and asked them to pop it off, as in play a backwards pass, and did a Cruyff turn. I think around that sort of time, we still do, but we were doing freestyle warm-ups where the kids, it was me and my ball, and one day you asked me to count one of the players' touches, which was a song. They'd freestyle for one song. Could be 5 minutes, who knows, but I counted and it was over 500 touches of the ball. Just them playing, doing what they wanted, using the insides, outsides, toes,
both feet,
top of their foot laces, heels. So yeah, both
experimenting,
feet.
Exploring.
Yeah, and it was 500 touches. And now you could even argue, if they're not touching the ball and they're doing a fake or a step over or a shimmy, they're getting a football specific movement in as well. So it's probably talking thousands of football movements, maybe not just touches, which is important to think about as well. And I know some people argue, well, if you don't get the ball that much in a game, you need to be working out what you're doing off the ball just as much. But I think it's the other way around.
But that stuff's easier to learn. Yes,
it is, but also if you only get it that few times in a game, you need to be really good with it, or the best you can be with that ball when you get those moments in a game. So you need to practice me and my ball, maybe me and my ball and my mate, a lot more.
A vicious circle to the bottom, isn't it? Because if they're not getting enough touches on the ball, they're not improving. So when they get it, they're going to lose it, or they're just going to hoof it away. And then they're getting even less time on the ball. So there's other players that might be getting better training or more training that are just accelerating past these other children who might have more potential than them.
We're only discussing this question as in our training environment that we know as well, aren't we? So there might be some training environments where they'd be better off playing matches than doing the training.
Well, yeah, I mean, if training's doing 20 laps of a pitch, like in my day, and then a few exercises, a little bit of maybe 2 people in the middle of a circle trying to get the ball from you, and some shooting at goal off the coach, and then straight into a match, then...
If your matches are training and matches and they're 2v2s and 3v3s and 4v4s, then maybe that is better than doing training if it's 11v11 on a massive pitch where it stops, stands still, and when the ball's there, where could you be? And
everything's about maximising time and purposeful touches of the ball. So as a parent or a coach, you can look at everything and go, is this maximising time? Is my child in a queue? Is my child sat out a lot? How much contact time again? Is it purposeful contact time with the ball? That's for the training, obviously. And then match time, just maybe have a little count up next time how many times they get at the ball. Maybe be your thing for the next few matches. Work out how many times they touch with their right foot, their left foot. How many decisions have they had to make?
And then take them to a futsal session and see if they get as many touches and as many actions, and compare that as well. That would be great.
Affordances for action, I think we call it in the skill acquisition world. Just opportunities to make decisions, which you only get in where you've maximised that with small-sided games. You get a futsal, you get more affordances for actions, opportunities to make decisions, whereas in a lot of matches that these children are playing in and learning on the job, they don't get that many opportunities for making decisions. If they do, it's normally the manager shouting out at them what they should do. Pass, pop it off, take them on, recycle. Reset now is a new recycle, by the way.
Yeah.
It was recycle back in my day, and now it's reset. So that means pop it back and start again. And these kids are becoming very robotic, and they're not having as much contact time as they need to actually get good at football. So, answer to the question, it is miles more important to have good quality training and contact time in the ball than it is to play matches.
But if your training's rubbish, play matches.
But make them small-sided so
Yes.
there's more affordances for action.
Yeah.
God, I hope we don't confuse people more with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's hope not. Shall we do one more question?
Okay.
Save the
Question
rest.
number 7 to finish on. Yeah.
Yes, and then we'll carry the other 2 over to 2 or 3 over to the next
Right.
session. Which hopefully Betsy will be available for. Take the pressure off us, Geoff.
I'll read this one.
Go on, mate.
It's a
Fire
long
away.
one. It's maybe the
Could take
first
a while.
time ever it's sent in to me. There might have been some in the past actually, but this one came in this week, didn't it?
Yeah.
Please, can I have some advice? Before my son started playing futsal, he was a very steady footballer. He would work hard, win the ball back, and look for the best pass. He very rarely put a foot wrong, but never really did anything to stand out. Since futsal, he's become a lot more confident on the ball and is happy to try and beat a man. However, he will now at times get himself into trouble during football matches by trying something new. Is that a normal part of his development?
Yes. And that has been the episode. Well, it was asked to you, so what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, go on, just talk for a minute. I was going to get my reply back up.
Oh, yeah, because you actually sent it through, weren't you, to answer, and you've answered it. I think this young lad has worked hard, and now he is more capable of doing stuff than he was before. And you always want your child to be capable of doing more than they were before. So the fact that they're capable of doing stuff and their confidence is improved, it means that they are developing well and it's progressing. But with that has become more mistakes. And I wouldn't be worried about those mistakes because those mistakes are learning opportunities. I don't know if this person has sent this in because they're frustrated because they're making more mistakes and their decisions aren't great at the moment at this stage, or whether the child's getting some heat from somewhere, either other parents, players, or the coach or manager of their team for giving the ball away in areas they shouldn't. That, Jeffrey, can be quite easily rectified by a coach saying, love what you tried there, but maybe don't try it there. Try it here, and with this in mind and this purpose. And it goes back to what you said before about maybe getting into boxing training. If that child's trying something that's not working, you could then at training get them to work on it with another player maybe or someone else. So yes, it's all part of their natural development. You don't want to teach kids to be average, do you, Geoff?
No.
Say, when I say average, you can do average really, really well and people make careers of it, and that's great, and you should be able to do the basics and fundamentals well. And I've been on this podcast many times saying those are the players you want, but you also want them to be capable of moments of magic. And I think, not on purpose, but I believe that gets coached out of a lot of kids, those moments of magic, because everyone wants them just doing the basics and not making mistakes, not giving the ball away, because that can lead to giving goals away and everyone wants to win. I would just be delighted if my son had the confidence to try the things and the ability to try those things, and then they're not always going to get it right. I mean, if your kid, going on one again, Geoff, sorry. If your kid is learning to play the guitar, you don't want them to just always play 10 songs that they've learned.
Or just be able to do the chords.
Or just be able to do the chords.
chords.
You know, at some point, you want to go, right, you've gone through that music book, those sheet music, you can play all 10, 15 of those songs, you know all the chords. At some point, your child, to get to the next level, has to be allowed to experiment and explore for themselves what works and what doesn't, and what type of musician they are or guitarist they are. Otherwise, they'll end up playing those 10 songs in a cover band one day, or just quitting because it's become boring. They need to be able to make that music by experimenting, exploring the possibilities, making a ton of mistakes. But unfortunately, practicing the guitar in your bedroom or with a band, you can make mistakes. Football, there's this big consequence of giving goals away and pressure to win, and that exploration in football is often coached out of players, which means they never fulfill potential. It's your question, Geoff. Sorry, mate.
That's pretty much what I sent back as my answer, honestly.
Sorry, buddy. I am. My passion sometimes takes over.
I think I'd said I'd rather have a Leo Messi in my team than a player that can only pass it sideways and backwards and doesn't make any mistakes. So.
But Leo Messi, that statistically gave the ball away more times than any other player in the Liga when he was there.
I didn't quite that stat back,
No.
but you know, I've never once been disappointed with this lad at Wessex and a decision they've made, if it's right or wrong, because there has been moments of magic where players are getting nutmegged.
I know this lad obviously very, very well, and you've got one video of him doing some crazy move because he's allowed the freedom to do it. Was it a training match or was it a
training match? He's doing it all the time at the moment, so and lots more to it.
Yeah, I mean, would you rather your child? I know what I would rather. My child was capable of doing those things. They just were choosing to do them at the wrong time.
It makes
that will come with experience and
time.
It
makes my Saturdays and it makes my Thursday nights and now Monday nights. It makes it special. It's why you get out of bed at whatever o'clock in the morning to go and do these sessions, isn't it? And
yeah. Don't seek average. Seek being really, really good at the basics. There's a difference.
Yeah.
But don't seek your child just to play within themselves because it looks tidy and keep the ball. You want them to take players on and try things. Obviously not in certain positions of the pitch, but then that's up to the coaches and the adults involved maybe to help them learn and understand that. And that's honestly the easy part. What your son can do with the ball comes with hard work, effort, exploration, and you should be delighted and proud. Don't let anyone say, "Oh, what's he trying there? Can't believe he's giving the ball away." You know, probably because their child's not capable of those moments of magic and never will be because they're not allowed the platform to try it.
And it's a great parent, by the way, who's always trusted and always come along to everything that we put on and stuck at it, and the rewards are there. And then there's a few, isn't there, that have.
Yeah.
You know, we complain about the ones that do go and the potentials, but there's plenty that do stay, and you do see their potential coming out, and you think, wow, thank goodness, this is why we do it. So thank you.
You'd be like, can you imagine if they'd stop playing at 10 or 11? And you think, look at what they can do now and how amazing they are.
Yeah.
And they're better than we ever were, and that's what you want as a coach.
Yeah. And there's a whole group of under 15s and 16s right now there's loads. So I'm really happy that there's plenty that have stuck at it and very grateful.
Cool. Well, I think we've added a little bit of value to however many questions. 7 was it today? Yeah, I think it was 7. Right, so we're going to leave it there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Football's not that important, is it?
It's just not that important, Jeff. It really is. You'd think it was by the amount of effort we put into this. If anybody out there has got any questions, because a lot of the ones we get in are from people we know and involve children we know, but if you're a bit further afield, did we have one from Norway or Denmark or something not that long ago?
Yeah, which I completely misread.
Yeah, we completely misread. But anyway, from wherever you are in the world, send us in a question. All of the contact details and email address and stuff is in the show notes. Please do subscribe and share because it really does help us to grow the podcast. And as always, never forget, football isn't that important, but children are. And we will see you next time. Thanks, Geoff.